Hi.
Hi. Oh my God. I'm so impressed that we're actually on live.
I
You are
know.
such a badass that you know how to do this.
Oh my gosh. Literally, the first time I did it was like a total panic.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it. So I even tried to have my book, but I don't even think you could see it. That's okay. This is so much fun. How are you? Oh, yay. And look, I have a bedazzled version.
Wow.
My friend's
Fancy.
daughters made that for me. Is that
I
so
love
cute?
them.
I
When
know.
my book comes out, I'm going to need a bedazzled. That's
Yes, yes,
so
we will
cute.
make that happen, Keisha.
Okay. So we'll just sort of let a few people join.
Sure.
What I'll do is introduce, ask a few questions to get the conversation going, and then typically a few people in the audience have a few questions.
Great.
Um, all right.
Look
So
at
I'll
you, the Instagram Live Pro.
take it easy. This is only number three. Um, okay, so I'll go ahead and do my little introduction. Today I'm joined by Colette Fehr, a licensed marriage and family therapist and the author of The Cost of Quiet, a book about avoiding hard conversations in relationships slowly creates distance and how couples can find their way back to honest communication. Colette Fehr, welcome to Cake for Dinner.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So we did our live podcast, and that was super successful. I've gotten so many comments about the book, but I thought it would be good to jump on here. People often just like pop on for 10 or 15 minutes during their lunch break. So I really want to dig into the book. So, what does cost of quiet actually look like in a relationship, and why do so many couples fall into the pattern of staying quiet just to keep the peace?
Yes, it's such a big issue. And quiet isn't always quiet. I have to say, it's really what I mean by the word quiet is that we're not talking about our deeper emotions, the fear, the hurt, the loneliness. We're not having the conversations that we should have. So sometimes we're just swallowing it and we're saying
Mhm.
nothing to keep the peace. Other times we end up, because we're not talking about what we should, we end up bickering and getting stuck in these just dead end arguments about why the butter's in the fridge, the butter should be on the counter, right? Like, why do you
Yeah.
put your feet on the coffee table? And usually, under these small, tiny things, there are deeper issues and attachment fears and longings to know that we're
Mhm.
loved, to know that we're good enough, right? To know that our partner still desires us, wants us, see us as valuable. So the reason we get stuck is because conflict can easily feel like a threat to the relationship when
Mhm.
you and your partner have a different opinion or your partner's upset with you. And it's natural in a way to do anything to avoid that. But if we can have the conversation where we name those fears, name our insecurities, ask for reassurance, and really talk about our deeper emotions, we can flip this whole thing around and not have quiet or avoidance destroy our relationships.
I like that. I like that you let off with explaining the quiet, that it's not necessarily quiet, because I do think people see the title and think, "Oh, I'm not bashful, I'm not quiet," but you're more alluding to avoidant behavior,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And I do say early on in the book, but of course, if you haven't read the book, all you see is the title. I do say right at the beginning that quiet's a euphemism for avoidance, for avoidant behavior. And in the book, I
Right.
name the top 10 ways we avoid, and many of them we don't realize we're avoiding. So, for example, one of them is we don't feel like we can communicate around the issues that bother us. So we start to numb out or distract ourselves. We turn to
Hmm.
other people. We have more
Hmm.
connection to our children or our friends than our partner. When you don't address the small things often as they arise and talk about them in the right way, they stack up, they turn into resentment, and that resentment turns into distance and disconnection. And that's the thing that really destroys our relationships.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean, I'm pretty bold and outspoken, but in my relationship, I do sometimes avoid just because it's easier. We've got a lot going on as a family, so I think it's really important to be specific about that. So, in your work with couples, when does that silence start to become dangerous? And when does keeping the peace start creating real emotional distance? So, like, when do you typically see this sort of start to arise?
I mean, it can start right away. I think right after the honeymoon phase, usually during that limerent dating phase, where what I mean by limerence is when your body is experiencing all of that dopamine and
Hmm.
oxytocin, and just even that person's name makes your heart flutter.
Hmm.
Nature does all of that to us so that we will bond with a close, reliable other. And naturally, those chemicals minimize differences and irritants. Your
Hmm.
partner's not any different at the beginning, but you just don't care so much because you're flooded with this feeling that's basically like being on opiates. Well, once that subsides, and it's anywhere from 6 months to sometimes as long as 3 years into a relationship, then shit gets real. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden things do bother you. Every couple has differences. Every person on the planet is going to do something that annoys you. And usually people start to say, oh, this just isn't such a big deal. I don't want to make everything a federal case, right? I don't want to just start a fight. This is not a big deal. But if you start doing that, a year or two into a relationship, maybe you can let some things go. But if you're not careful, very quickly, those things build up. And the problem is that we create a story about what that other partner is doing, that other person is doing, and why. And if we don't talk about it, repair, clear up misunderstandings, then the story feels truer and truer and truer. Right. Well,
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. Like, well, you didn't do the thing I asked because you just don't care. You don't listen to me and you don't care. So people will tell me in my office, this is how I feel. I feel like you don't listen and you don't care. But those aren't your feelings. That's actually the story that your mind has
Hmm.
constructed. Your feelings might be sadness, hurt, and disappointment. So if you can share that and say, hey, when you didn't pick up the dry cleaning, like I asked you for a random example, I felt disappointed. I was sad. It hurt my feelings. And the
Yeah.
story in my mind is that you don't listen to me and you don't care about what I ask. Then we have an invitation into a deeper connected place where we can really learn about each other under the hood. We
Yes.
all have those fears and longings.
I feel like too, it's less accusatory. I usually tell the couples I work with to say that the story I'm making up in my mind right now, because then some of the onus is on you and sort of how you're perceiving it. And it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
an easier conversation to have.
It's critically important. In fact, if there's one thing that comes out of this right now, everybody does it. I hear it all the time. It's instinctive, and it's exactly the reason you're saying. It's not just the invitation. Nobody, if you project your story onto
Mhm.
someone else, the automatic go to, first of all, you're usually wrong. You're,
Right.
you're you're right. We're just not right about what the other person is thinking and doing. And if you tell me I did something because I don't care about you, I'm going to immediately want to get defensive. But if you tell
Mhm.
me that your feelings are hurt and what your mind's telling you about that is this, and hey,
Yes,
Colette,
that's
it's
so
that.
much more approachable.
Yes, is that true? And then I can say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're hurt. And that I do care. That isn't true
Mhm.
at all. That is does not reflect how I feel about you.
And our poor partners, because some of the stuff in the beginning that's just like cute, like when I first met my husband, he was like, he's like so slow and he would like listen forever. I would tell a long story and he'd like pull the car over and I was like, oh, this is what I've needed my whole life. Now I'm like, hurry the fuck up. You know what I mean? So it's
Sure.
like sometimes it's like the stuff in the beginning that's cute becomes less cute. And I think being able to communicate that about that, even laughing about it or whatever, at least addressing it, because otherwise those resentments just build.
Right, right. And the resentments come from, and I see that my friend Jennifer's on right now saying triggers our defense. So true. It's automatic. Most things are misunderstandings. And if
Mm,
we can address issues at the oil change stage of the relationship early on, build good habits, not when the engine's on fire in the middle of I-95, right?
right,
Then our
right.
stories have built up so big and so large. right? If we can dig into, when you do this thing that I used to think was cute, you and I must have the same husband because mine's really slow too, right? And we're both like more fast moving and
Yes.
right. So it does, it grates on your nerves, and that's okay. That's normal marital stuff. But if it's triggering something deeper inside, like I get frustrated and the message I get is something negative about me or you,
Yes.
let's clear that up now so we don't come away with that story getting stronger.
I love that. What's one conversation that most couples avoid for years, and what tends to happen in the relationship when it never actually gets said out loud? So, is there anything like typically that you see?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is that people don't talk about these little moments when they get triggered and their feelings are hurt. They just tell themselves without even realizing it that it's not a big deal and it's not worth it. And I will have
Mhm.
people tell me literally, oh my God, then you're just being difficult or you're making a mountain out of a molehill or you're going to be communicating forever. The better you communicate, the less you have to communicate. So that's number one. Number two, nobody wants to talk about money and differences around money. We have to talk about it. It takes money to live. But number three, and biggest and most important that I see as a couples therapist, people do not talk directly about their sex lives. Some
Mm.
do, but very few. Those are really important conversations to have. Sex is so personal. It's so important. It's such an important component of a relationship. We need emotional intimacy and we need physical intimacy. And the way physical intimacy gets better is by talking about it explicitly and directly, naming your fears, naming your insecurities, and also talking about what you desire, what you fantasize about, what's pleasing to you. If you start dating someone when you're 18 and you're married for 30 years, what you want sexually is going to have changed tremendously
Mhm.
for the most part, right? 30 years down the road. So be in conversation about that. And I would say have the courage to be curious about your partner. Ask questions. Are you satisfied? Are you interested in something different? What could I work on in this relationship?
Mhm. You might want to let them know you read the book. If you come home just asking about their sexual interest, they might be a little taken off guard. Um, for couples listening right now, what is one small shift they can make today to start speaking more honestly without turning it into a fight? Because I think sometimes if you do struggle with this concept can feel overwhelming. Is there like a small shift that people can implement?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's what we're talking about. Be leading with your feelings, your
Hmm.
actual inner experience. You're right, it does feel overwhelming, but though you have to do it to see that it's actually not as scary as it seems like it's going to be. It's
Right.
worse in anticipation. But if
Hmm.
you share, this is the impact that this had on me, and we use I statements and we pick something really small. So I would encourage, if you're listening right now, whether it's with a partner or a friend or a coworker, just for your own practice, think about something that bothered you. And before you even worry about how you say it to someone else or whether or not you're going to, get curious inside yourself. First, begin an inquiry inward. Connect to yourself. This is the whole premise that I walk people through in the book, is a process called self-connected communication. And this is about that you prepare before you share so that when you do bring something up, you feel more confident. And that comes
Hmm.
from going, hey, why did this bother me? It's not for no reason. Can I actually name the emotions I feel? Am I anxious? Am I sad? Am I lonely? Am I angry? Right? And emotions will help us to figure out what we need. All this communication is in service of asking people more clearly and directly for what we need. And when we do that clearly and kindly, and we're
Hmm.
vulnerable with our feelings, we have a much better chance of it going well and not turning into an argument. So it might be as simple as starting with, Hey, the other day I noticed when somebody made a comment to me that they acted like it was a joke. It rubbed me the wrong way. Let me take a couple minutes and just explore within myself. Why did that bother me? What was that
Right.
about? Does this warrant bringing something up? Like, would it be better? Will I feel resentful if I don't say something? And if
Mhm.
you do approach from the place of, you know what? I'm not assuming anything negative about you or your intentions. I just want to tell you how that comment impacted me. It hurt my feelings a little, and it's because I care about you so much in this relationship that I'm willing to take the risk to tell you about it.
I love that. Do you do that back and forth with couples?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the process in here is that in good couples therapy, there really should be, whatever model you use, an experiential component where you want to get people bring up the triggers, not in an
Hmm.
injurious way, but so that there's enough emotion that we can say, okay, let's go deeper. What was underneath that behavior at the surface? What was the story? What were the feelings? What were the fears? What do you actually want and need? What are you longing for? And then I'll have someone turn to their partner and say it in this self-connected way. And we see how it lands.
Right. And then you can help them with how it landed. Yeah, this is
Exactly.
one of the reasons I wanted to do this for the clinical staff at Guardian. And I just feel like the communication tools in here are so useful and easy to apply. So if someone is listening right now and there's something in their relationship they know they need to talk about, but they're afraid of how their partner will react, what's the healthiest way to start the conversation? Because I do think sometimes there will be one partner who's invested, they know we have these problems, and they're just nervous. Like you said, people have been married a long time. And if you haven't been doing this, coming home today after work and being like, hey, I read this book, so how do you advise people that are in that situation?
Yeah, so I think that's very, very true. And it starts, first of all, the book walks you through all of this, how to do all of this, and it is a process. But the biggest mistake people make, because you're absolutely right, one person usually would like to have the
Yes.
conversation if it could go well, and the other is like, I'd rather not have it ever, right?
Right.
That would be my husband. But I've trained him better than that now, hopefully. But it actually starts with that's the conversation, that naming the fear, naming the worry. Like, hey, I'd like to talk about something, but I'm really scared it's going to lead to an argument. It's very hard for me to bring things up. I'm
Mhm.
worried that you'll react poorly. We don't even have to talk about it yet. Start by acknowledging the feelings around starting to talk about it because we
Yes.
meet each other in vulnerability, and
Mhm.
your partner will probably, and now you're not coming on an attack, you're not coming protectively. There's no accusation. You're coming and saying, hey, I really want to work on myself and my own
Right.
ability to bring things up. And for us both to be able to talk about some of our issues or our longings and not have it turn into an argument. But this is really scary and new for me. How do you feel about it? Is this something
Yes.
you want to do? Like, just get into conversation about the thing and how hard it is to do this thing. Because, Keisha, everybody, this is wired into our humanity because we're pro social herd animals. Conflict is naturally scary. Like, there's
Yes.
nothing wrong with you that you don't want to do this. This is the human order. But if we want to have real deeply connected relationships, we have to learn and we have to do it as a team. Like, can we walk into this together and acknowledge that it's uncomfortable and new?
Yeah, and I think too, how does it relate especially to moms, like in a coupleship? Because I feel like as moms we also have so much going on that prioritizing the marriage or the tough conversations while you're raising kids is difficult.
Very. It's very difficult. And I know you know this. I wrote this book because I didn't follow my own advice in my first marriage because I
That's why
wasn't a
we're all
therapist.
writing a book,
Yeah,
Colette.
exactly. And you learn from your mistakes.
You
And I
do.
think it's very challenging, especially if you're in an active parenting stage. It can easily feel like just more emotional labor falling on the woman. Often women are the ones who carry the emotional labor, will bring things up. But I want you to just start to notice and tune into if you're automatically going, well, forget it. It won't go anywhere. And I don't have time. I can't deal with another thing. That's an understandable but dangerous road to go down because
Hmm.
you're going to end up filled with resentment, and the only person that's going to hurt is you. So you may have to find, a couple of moments. You
Hmm.
don't need we're not talking about, these should not be hour-long conversations. These are short conversations. You're not managing somebody else. You're not responsible for their emotions. Sometimes it can feel that way, but we've got to do our own work to fire ourselves from that. You're telling someone, hey, because I care about you and our relationship's important, something happened that hurt my feelings, and I'm trying to be vulnerable here, not to create a problem, but just to tell you how I feel so that we can repair. We know from all the research on relationships from the Gottmans, who are the definitive, they're the go to.
Yeah.
They've done 40 years of research on relationships, that relationships are rupture and repair. When we live close to someone, we're constantly going to step on their toes, annoy them, hurt their feelings. It's impossible not to. But if we can have small conversations that focus on one thing at a time, lead with our feelings, ask for what we need, and repair, apologize for whatever we did, regardless of our intentions, then there's no residue,
Right.
right? And then these conversations are very short. So even if you're a busy mom, spend some time getting curious about what you're not saying and why. See if you can start with naming how hard it is to bring things up, and challenge yourself to just focus on sharing your own inner world and experience instead of telling the other person what they're doing wrong and why.
I think 2 points. One, I like the idea of letting them know up front this is tough, right? I always advise even my teenagers, it's better to say more, right? Just like be vulnerable. This is like super hard for me, foreign or whatever. Um, and just to let the other person know that you are being vulnerable. And I do think a conversation goes certainly better from that spot.
100%. It's actually really a big deal. It creates so much safety.
Hmm.
We can't see inside of each other, and there often is, all of this is going on. So when you actually say it explicitly, then the other person knows what's happening with you, and their mind doesn't fill in the blank with something more
Yeah.
negative. And vulnerability naturally invites vulnerability. So when you're like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm coming to you vulnerably, like, I want to talk about this so we can be stronger and better, not to argue. And I'm scared. This is hard for me.
Right.
It's so unlikely. I mean, of course, there are people out there that no matter how you tee it up, it's not going to go well. But what I see in my office, and I'm sure you see this too, is when we really get to genuine clarity and vulnerability and we lead with that, it tends to bring a very different response than what we anticipate.
For sure. And I was going to mention two things, but my
Yeah.
menopause set in and I forgot the second thing, but it just came to me. You did briefly address one thing at a time. So, how often do you see that? I'm coming to you vulnerably with this thing, and then it sort of spins off into a whole nother litany of things you don't like about the person.
I'm so glad you asked that and pointed that out. That is hugely important. It really has to focus on one issue. Most of the time, because we avoid, and it's natural, things build up.
Hmm.
And once we start and we're emboldened, okay, well, now I've got
Right.
my moment. Now I'm going to bring it. And I do it too. It's human. Pandora's box is open. And now I'm going to remind you of the thing you did 16 years ago that still pisses me off. Oh, and then there was last week. And then we're all over the place. And we're also
Right.
talking globally about the relationship. No human being can take all of that in, and you're not going to
Mhm.
get any constructive repair or change. So pick one thing, agree that you're going to talk about that one thing, and you're going to talk about how it impacted you and what it meant to you and what the needs are for comfort, reassurance, and support. Most things people are skipping that part, that we're getting into you're right, I'm wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. It's really about, hey, can you reassure me that I'm good enough in your eyes? Right?
Mhm.
So focus on the one little thing that bothered you and get to that layer. And if you have good repair there, then another time you can address another little thing. And if you address things well and repair well, then they stack up toward positivity and connection.
Right. Do you use any specific tools in your practice? Like, are you familiar with Thanos or any
Yeah,
acronyms that,
I use Spanos.
okay, I love that.
Me too. Me too.
Maybe give the listeners a little sneak
Yeah.
peek because I think that's such a great tool for couples.
I do too. So now what's interesting though, and I don't talk about Thanos in my book. It's not my tool, but I do give it to my couples. When couples are not in a place of enough, like when they're still too reactive, it's
Hmm.
probably not going to work. But basically, without getting too in the weeds, it's an acronym for a really great kind of check-in where you sit down and you just kind of share with your partner something you've been feeling, something you appreciate about them, something you need, something you're struggling with. And what's so great about this is that it lets your partner see inside of you. And it comes from the acronym, as you well know, from the Greek word of shedding light inside.
Hmm.
So this lets our partner know what's happening. And of course, we need to hear appreciations. But what's also useful is not just expressing appreciation, but the act for you of naming an emotion and sharing it,
Yes.
naming a need and share. Because some people cannot, they haven't had experience
Hmm.
doing that. They didn't grow up in households where it was safe. But if you're not, we call it in couples therapy de-escalated. If you're not de-escalated enough, you're
It's
probably
tough.
just going to get in an argument even over
Yeah.
Phanos.
Right.
But these check-ins are such a good habit to have. And I think if we
Mhm.
could get all premarital couples to have a
Oh my
timeout
gosh.
policy
Yeah.
and a check-in, we'd be out of a job.
That brings me to my last question. Do you advocate for specific times? Like, in other words, once you start down this path, do you think it's best for couples to, like, okay, every Wednesday we're going to sit down and like to designate time?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, especially during busy seasons of life, you would designate a time. And I think also if you're not accustomed to addressing things, it can be
Right.
helpful to set
Hmm.
a time. And then eventually, it becomes the default way you do things. I talk about everything that bothers and hurts my feelings, but these conversations are short, and then we're not spending, we don't need long, you should not be having long summits on what bothers you in your relationship. So pick a time of the week and set 15 minutes just to
Yes.
express yourself.
I think that also is great for the partner who, imagine if they're a little bit like not excited about this. It's like, okay, we got this amount of time. Come to the party prepared. You know, let's get down to business.
I
Let me
agree,
just go
Keisha.
through here and see if there's any questions for us. Somebody would like to talk about sex, that's all it says. Um, I think
Do
you
it.
addressed in the beginning that it is obviously a super important conversation.
Yep.
There's a lot
And
of pressure around sex too, though, like how much sex you're supposed to be having, if especially also when you're going into the later stages, or not the later, the middle stages where your hormones are out of whack and needing to communicate about that.
yeah. And this is really to make these sex conversations more approachable. Just like I'm talking about naming the fear of addressing a grievance. name how uncomfortable it is to talk about sex. Start there. I
Right.
feel like I want to kind of talk about what's happening with our sex life, but it's so awkward and I'm worried about how it's going to go. How do you feel about talking about? You've got to wade in. I often use the
Hmm.
metaphor of like I get into the pool like an old lady. Like I put my feet in and then I like splash and I'm like, oh, I dread getting up here where I can't breathe, right?
Yeah.
And being a Floridian now, if the water is not like 88 degrees, I don't even want to get in. You got to get into these conversations by saying, hey, can we talk about this? This is hard. This is scary. Let's be in that together and acknowledge how difficult this is and help each other feel safer that we're in it together.
That actually makes me think of a funny story. It's a bit unrelated, but you'll enjoy it. I was hiking in Asheville with my girlfriend, and we got to the place where it's like a huge waterfall, and the water is super cold. And everybody was like wading in, like, putting their toes in and their ankles in. And I was just like, fuck it. I just jumped in and popped out. And it's probably how I engage in conversations with my husband as well. And, not always the best strategy
I
for
love
the
it though.
water or your marriage.
Right, right. I mean, listen, I think it's great to be direct, but it can be
Mhm.
too much sometimes for some people. And I think also it depends on your own comfort level. It just
Yes.
helps you get, if you're somebody who wants to jump right in and go to the heart, great. And your partner can handle that. But it tends to help other people feel safer to say,
Right.
I want to bring something up. Is this a good time? I don't want to argue with you. And I want to make sure I mention this before we wrap up. Use attachment friendly language. Say things like, you're important to me. This
Mm.
relationship is important to me. Those things scientifically soothe our nervous system. They bring our limbic system into a good place of, okay, this person is my partner, not my enemy. Otherwise, our brain tends to code these moments as a threat. So start by, whether you jump in the water or not, start by saying, hey, I want to talk about something and you're very important to me. I love you. This relationship matters. And in fact, that's why I want to bring it up. Can we just have this conversation in a really constructive way?
Awesome information. Well, does anybody else have any questions? I mean, we're getting a lot of comments. Great conversation. Enjoyed it.
Don't
Um,
exactly. Don't want our partner to get flooded. Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. And I think I will tag this in the show notes. With your sparkly version. But every married couple needs this book. Like
Yes.
this book is amazing. And what I love most about it is that it really is an easy read and easy to apply because there's nothing worse than getting a clinical book that's tough to understand. So I will tag this in the show notes. If you're
Thank you.
not following Colette, you should follow Colette. Every married couple needs this information. If you're local to Orlando, you are seeing clients, correct?
I am. I
Yes.
am. Right after this, I'm going back in session.
Awesome. So how can people find you if they're interested?
Yes. So my website, ColetteJaneFair.com. You can message me through there. You can send me a text message, DM me through Instagram. And of course, I can't do anything therapeutic there for scheduling
Mhm.
purposes only. And like you said, the book is really easy to use. I have to thank my editor for forcing me to not make it too clinical. And I think it will be very helpful. So, and I just want to also throw out, if you guys are on here because of me, follow Keisha. She's amazing. You may know her from our live podcast, but I want everyone to get you to know you more too, because
Thank
I
you.
think you're fabulous.
Oh, thank you so much. And yes, my Instagram is Keisha W. Scott. My website just launched www.keishascott.com. And I'm doing this every Wednesday at noon, typically interviewing authors. Last week we had Laura Love with the Mini Lives of Mama Love from the Oprah Book Club. And this is super fun. It's a quick 30-minute interview that, gives you guys a sneak peek into some amazing books. So we will see you next week on Cake for Dinner Live. Thanks, everybody.